Hi, this is Dropper from Google. Today's video topic is about me sharing some quick thoughts about the new Chaos Armor system that is coming in Diablo 4 Season 10, and that we'll be able to experience firsthand during the PTR from next Tuesday, August 20th to August 27th. I'll be making a tier list of those Chaos Armors, specifically tailored for the Barbarian class, as it's the only class I played for the past 2 years, and I'm honestly completely clueless about the rest of the classes. So, what are Chaos Armor? Well, Chaos Armor mimic a list of existing uniques, which can be weapons, jewelry as like a source material, and they drop as any armor slots. So you would have weapons dropping as boots, or helmet dropping as gloves, etc. You can equip up to 5 of those Chaos Armor at the same time, pretty much one for each armor slot. So helmet, chest, gloves, pants, and boots. And you cannot wear both the original unique and its Chaos version at the same time. The other advantage of Chaos Armor outside of the whole gear flexibility is that they retain the same implicit stat and affixes, with 1 GA being guaranteed, so they always ancestral, which means that, for example, if you drop an amulet Chaos version as boots, those boots would have the implicit 30% all resistances of the amulet guaranteed. The second advantage of those Chaos Armor is that their unique effect is always max rolled, on top of having a 20% effecting. So they are a bit of a mix between the Diablo 3 or Radric Cube, as they are fairly flexible, and ethereal weapons as well, for those of you that did play the Diablo 3 seasons, in the sense of that they bring a lot of powers. And they also bring a little bit of that item chase craving that was currently missing in Diablo 4. So I'm honestly kind of hyped for those. Regarding those items, they are restricted to Season 10, but I do hope that they'll be a permanent addition to the base game. Hopefully everyone gives enough positive feedback to the default team and they might just add it to the base game. Like, they could be just like a rotating list of uniques, of different uniques every season, or they could just keep this first list and just add new ones in the future. I don't know. So, precision to somehow rate and rank the first batch of Chaos Armor, I'll be using below criterias, which are going to be the item implicit affix, the item explicit affix, the unique bonus, item usability, and pretty much build related performances of the base unique item. Okay, first on the list is going to be the Locran's Talisman. So, quick pros and cons. The 30% resistance to all elements here as the implicit on top of the 19.5% resistance to all element explicit affix are quite good for barbs, as we do have a few issues getting our resistance capped. The all stat and crit strike damage values are quite low, so those don't matter much, to be honest. The max resource, on the other hand, is definitely interesting for basic skill builds that do scale off max resource. And when it comes to the unique effect, this one is separated in two. The first one being just giving you critical strike chance up to 48%, with the 20% buff. And the second one, which is the most interesting one, being the increase to critical strike damage for each point above 100 primary resource. So the cons on the item are that the critical strike chance right there does not reflect in the stat sheet, which means it has no effect for bleed builds that use the Gushing Wound key passive. And the second problem with the item is that the second line of the unique effect is in yellow, which means it's not going to get affected by the 20% buff of the Chaos unique type. So for all of those reasons, this item is going to be going into the A tier. Next item is going to be Banished Lord Talisman. Well, as an amulet as well, this item is going to get implicit or resistances, which is, as I said earlier, always nice. The max life is kinda whatever, to be honest, since Season 9. Overpowered damage no longer scales offensively with maximum life. Same goes for the overpowered damage value, which is quite low. Attack speed is always nice, but it's mostly the +4 to core skill that is quite interesting. And the unique effect, which is also pretty much like a double dual effect. The first one being you are granted an overpowered ticket for your next core skill whenever you spend 275 of your primary resource. And any of your critical strikes that overpower deal 72% increased damage. So this item is going to be going into B tier, the main reason being that the affixes on the item are not up to standard, I'm going to say, and it's still fairly restricted to core skill. Okay, the third amulet, Battle Trance. Battle Trance is in a bit of an interesting spot in Season 10, as some of the affixes have changed. So let's start from the top. We do have always the 30% resistance to all element. We do have the lucky hit, up to 20% chance to gain a stack of frenzy. As a reminder, each of the friends, you can get up to 3 frenzy stacks. With the amulet, you get up to 5. And Dew's frenzy stack can give you various kind of bonuses depending on the points you spend on frenzy, depending on the enhanced and advanced nodes. When it comes to the other affixes, this is much more interesting as you get critical strike chance, which is always good to get. You get maximum resource, which is once again very good for basic and Hammer of the Ancient builds. You get now strength as well, which is universally good for any Barbarian build. And then you get the +10 to Frenzy, which is kinda whatever unless you do intend to play a pure Frenzy build. And then once again, the unique effect is fully affected by the 20% bonus. So whenever you are at the maximum amount of stack of Frenzy, you do get 72% increased damage. And all of your other skill and Frenzy get 66% increased attack speed as well. So given this sizable amount of the bonus on the unique effect, the 72% there, on top of the max resource, on top of the crit chance, on top of the strength, and the interesting mechanic with the lucky hit, I'm gonna be putting this item in S tier for sure. So, yay, we're finally playing Battle Trance, even on non-frenzy builds. The remaining amulet is going to be Unbroken Chain, and this is going to be a quick one. Well, the inherent affix, implicit affix, sorry, is still all resistances, which is quite good. We do have 30.7% strength, which is very good. We do have Slaying Strike, which is the bonus damage to healthy and injured enemy, which is pretty decent. And then we do have some ultimate damage, which is kinda whatever in most builds. This is no longer Season 8, unfortunately. And the Steel Grasp cooldown reduction, which is not all that useful, to be honest. Then we take a look at the unique effect, and we can see that this one is pretty much only usable in case of you playing Iron Maelstrom, or maybe Support Barb, just for the 48% less damage. So for all of those reasons, I cannot really recommend anyone to be using this one, unless, as I said, you intend on playing Support Barb or try to do some funny shenanigans with Iron Maelstrom. So this item is going to be going to C tier. It's not the worst, because the affixes are pretty good, but the unique effect not being generic enough kind of seals the deal there. Next on the list are going to be the rings. The first one is going to be Mother's Embrace. The item implicit are somewhat interesting. I mean, they are just rings, so it's always nice to get resistances. The affixes are pretty good, to be honest. You do get attack speed, crit chance, a little bit of all stats, and a little bit of lucky hit chance. Unfortunately, the unique effect has no offensive value. It's pretty much just refunds some resources, which doesn't even work on single target bosses. So for all of those reasons, this item is going straight to the lowest tier, which is going to be D in our case. Next item is going to be X-File Corroded Signet. Once again, you do get a little bit of implicit resistances. The fire resistance does not matter all that much for Barbarian, and we still have way too many of it. The all stats are somewhat interesting. The damage over time we don't really care about. The vulnerable damage neither. The lucky hit chance neither. And the unique effect in itself has way too little value and way too little damage to be even remotely usable as a Barb class. So we'll leave that to someone else, and we'll put it as well straight to the D tier as well. Next item is going to be Ring of the Ravenous, which is a Barbarian class unique ring. And from there, we do still have these interesting all resistances on top of shadow resistance, which is extremely hard to get for Barbarian, because we have absolutely none on the Barbarian board. It does have critical strike chance, which is pretty good. The vulnerable damage is whatever. The brawling skills is fairly important for multiple builds, such as Leap, and it also buffs Warcry. The +5 to Rend is somewhat acceptable. I still do think that Rend is a worse version of Flay, but well, it is what it is. The unique effect, on the other hand, is somewhat interesting because the Rend duration gets increased up to 9.6 seconds, which is pretty big. And whenever you damage enemies with any brawling skill, you do apply 2 stacks of Rend at the same time. So I can see this item being used as is, maybe for a kind of support Barb that just want to play with Warcry, or if someone really wants to play with Rend in some kind of like rolling Rend setup, which we pretty much didn't see much in the past, but well, Season 10 might be time for this to shine. So unfortunately, I'm still going to be putting this in like C tier, because I do have doubt that this item is usable. The next item is going to be the Ring of Red Furor, which is once again the implicit are somewhat interesting for the all resistances, the fire resistances, whatever, once again. However, when it comes to the effects, it does have a big amount of max resource, which is extremely useful for basic skill build, Hammer of the Ancient build, and for Mighty Throw actually as well, as we do, like a couple of builds do tend to use the Quacks interaction that empties like over 200 Fury to cap out Supreme Wrath of the Berserker. We also have a decent amount of attack speed, a pretty big amount of critical strike damage as well, and the fire resistance that no one wanted but that we got. The rest is much more interesting though, and that's the unique effect, which applies to core and weapon mastery skill, which can gain up to 96% critical strike damage on top of being guaranteed critical strike chance. So this still remains very specific to core and weapon mastery skills. However, given the size of the unique effect and the somewhat desirable affixes, I'm going to be putting this one as B tier. It's pretty good, but kind of restricted. Alrighty, weapons time now. This is going to be a quick one. The first weapon we're going to be reviewing is going to be Overkill. Overkill is the Death Blow specific to 100 mace. It is quite a bit of an interesting weapon in this case. The main reason being it has an insane amount of implicit damage to injured enemies. It also has an insane amount of strength and additive physical damage and vulnerable damage. The Death Blow ranks obviously make it only worth for Death Blow, on top of the unique effect being Death Blow related. So as a stat stick, it is somewhat interesting for a weapon. As a weapon, it's still like a two-handed one. However, since it's very Death Blow specific, and the last time Death Blow was good was Season 5, I'm gonna be putting this item like in the C tier, unfortunately. I do want Death Blow to succeed, but I doubt it's gonna be see much use. The next item though is much more interesting. It is the new unique one-handed, which is most likely gonna be a sword. And it's called the Sabre of Tsasgal. I hope I said that right. This item is extremely interesting for like a couple of reasons. The first one being the implicit is somewhat interesting. It's once again similar to what we got with like Third Blade and Shard of Raphael. It does have a good amount of strength. It does have a good amount of additive physical damage. It gives you bonus to core skills, which is pretty nice to be honest. But mostly you do get access to the same, if not actually a little bit, one more rank of Warpath compared to if you had it tempered. So this makes the item actually very valuable as is, and the unique effect is pretty much the icing on the cake because you get two separate multipliers, the first one being up to 6% for each damage skill you have equipped, and then you gain another 12% every time you press one of those damaging skill on your bar. So quick math, that means that you can get 66, so 36% increased damage baseline on top of 72% damage multiplier, as long as the multiplier do work and are added to one another, which makes it very, very interesting, even for builds that do not use any core skill. So I'm putting this one in S, that's for sure. Okay, next category is going to be helmets. The first one is going to be Crown of Lucion. Crown of Lucion has been quite a very used item in Season 9, especially for basic skill builds. And I still expect it to be used in Season 10. The main reason being that it does have the highest damage multiplier on the helmet. So we're getting this time up to 18% per stack, up to 5 stack, which means we're getting up to 90% increased damage on the helmet slot. When it comes to the affixes of the helmet in itself, you do get some max life, which is always good. Some cooldown reduction as well, which is very good. Lucky hit chance is kind of whatever, but does have its uses. But the shadow resistance is fairly important as well, as it's the hardest resistance to get for Barbarians. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to be putting the Crown of Lucion in S tier. I do still expect it to be fairly used on all of the basic skill builds. Then we do have the Godslayer Crown, which is a little bit more of an early endgame helmet so far. It does have a nice effect, which goes up to 72% his damage and the little pull-in effect. The problem is this effect barely have 25% uptime, which is kinda low. And the stats on the item are, I would say, kind of whatever. You get cooldown reduction, which is nice. Max life is nice. All stat is acceptable. The additive damage to elite is kind of whatever. So somewhat usable, but the unique effect being having such low uptime makes it kind of bad. So I'm gonna be putting this one in C tier. Still usable, just not great. Next one is going to be Tuskhelm of Joritz the Mighty, which used to be our favorite Barbarian helmet during Season 4 and Season 5, if I remember right. It is getting some more value since Season 9, mainly due to the lack of additive damage that we had as Barb since the overpower changes. This helmet pretty much has tons of it, like a lot of damage while berserking, which is very good. You do get a lot of attack speed as well, a lot of movement speed, you do get maximum life, and if that was not enough, you get, whenever you gain a new berserking buff when you already had it active, you can have a chance of getting increased damage, fury per second, and cooldown reduction, which is pretty much everything Barbarian love. At least during the early endgame, once again. So this one is definitely going straight to A tier because it is very usable and a strong option, that's for sure. Alright, now we do have the infamous Ugly Bastard helmet. If you look at the helmet, you will be like, this one is amazing, everyone loves it. And rightfully so, because this helmet has, well, a good amount of fire resistance. Just kidding, we have tons of those, we don't really need it. But you do gain a lot of bonus ranks to Prolific Fury, which is very good for Fury generation, as it is the Fury generation passive whenever you're berserking. You do get mostly a lot of Wrath of the Berserker cooldown reduction, and Wrath of the Berserker still sounds like one of the strongest ultimate to use in Season 10. And you do get this aggressive resistance, which is a lot of damage reduction whenever you're berserking, and the lucky hit effect is pretty good, despite them being nerfed in Season 10 and no longer scaling with attack speed. The main point of that about the helmet is the wall effect, which was also what made it pretty infamous in Season 9. This is like a 2 lines effect, so whenever you cast Wrath of the Berserker, for the next 10 seconds, all of your direct damage is going to be converted into fire damage. And baseline, you deal 72% increased fire damage. Now, why the helmet was infamous was that in Season 9, this effect about you dealing, converting all of your damage into fire would completely stop working as if you refreshed Wrath of the Berserker before the 10-second buff fold off. So hopefully this got fixed. If it did, I would say this item will be well worthy of being close to S tier. In the meantime, I'm gonna be safe and just put it as A. Technically, you know what, I'm gonna be dropping Tuskhelm to B tier because it is pretty good, but the multiplier is just not as good. Right, we're getting closer to the end. The next category is gonna be chests. So our chest options for Chaos Armor are the Mantle of Mountain Fury, which is honestly kind of disappointing. The main reason being that the unique effect has absolutely no offensive value. It only slows enemies. So doesn't matter if the roll is good, doesn't matter if the affix is very high. The only interesting things are the affixes, which are the implicit, which gives us extra Hammer of the Ancient damage for 5 seconds, and the chance for Earthquake to deal double damage on top of, well, the Hammer of the Ancient ranks and defensive stance ranks as well. The armor is kinda whatever because you do end up overcapping armor very easily as Barbarian, especially with this chest. So for all of those reasons, I can't really recommend any build to use this as a Chaos Armor, unless you have something else to put on your chest slot and you kind of want to move the item somewhere else. So I'm going to be putting this one as C tier because it does look highly build specific regarding whether you're going to be using the chest or not. Next one is going to be Rage of Harrogath, which saw a return in Season 8 the Kota build, and in Season 9 with Lunging Strike and Flay. Kinda in a similar spot to Mantle of Mountain Fury. The unique effect, 20% increase, has close to no value there. The item in itself, when it comes to affixes, is quite decent. You do have max life, a lot of DR, decent amount of crit strike chance, and some damage over time. So it is still usable. However, I think there are stronger options in Season 10, so I'm gonna be putting this one in about here. Sorry, Rage. Next one is gonna be the Gloves category. We're gonna be starting off strong with the Fist of Fates. Fist of Fates are gonna be an absolute banger in Season 10 if you get those as Chaos Armor. The main reason being, well, the unique effect gets increased to up to 360%, which is absolutely massive. The item still has lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, attack speed, which all of three are very desirable stats for a lot of barb builds. But mostly, we no longer have any kind of seasonal effect that applies vulnerable for us, so having the Fist of Fate effect is going to be extremely valuable. So for all of those reasons, this is going directly into S tier. No questions asked there. The next gloves are going to be Endurant Faith, mostly hardcore used gloves, due to the fact that they would usually prevent one shot. The effect still gets increased to up to 36% of the damage that you will take will be just like distributed over 3 seconds. Problem is to me that the affixes on the items are kinda bad. Max life is somewhat acceptable, but lucky hit chance is kinda whatever. Healing received has not a lot of value. You already get a lot of it from Paragon and Willpower alone. And all stat is kinda whatever as well. So for all of those reasons, I'll say if you're hardcore and you like to use it, keep going, but I would rather skip it entirely. So I'm gonna be putting this one in probably D tier. Sorry. Next, gloves are gonna be the basic skill gloves that everyone loved in Season 9 and had a rough time getting. So the Paingorger Gauntlet, as I said, basic skill specific, they have all of the stats you could look for. You get attack speed, you get basic skill ranks, you get cooldown reduction. The lucky hit is kind of bad. Well, let's face it, it's pretty bad. The unique effect, on the other hand, is getting an increase to up to 150%, which is a sizable increase once again, making the gloves a very desirable Chaos Armor unique to look for. The main problem with those gloves, unless fixed during the PTR, was that they would only reflect the damage caused by the first hit of your basic skill, which means that Frenzy double hitting and actually quad hitting with the chance to hit twice temper and Bash chance to hit twice temper, you would only get the very first hit to be reflected and echoed to all of the marked target. And the damage in itself did not scale with a few multipliers. So I'm still expecting basic skill to be extremely strong in Season 10, so I'm still going to be putting this one just below the Fist of Fate in A tier. Next one is going to be Gohr Devastating Grips, which is going to be the last of the gloves. When it comes to the stats in itself, well, I guess Gohr is every Whirlwind Enjoyer dream. It has critical strike chance, it has movement speed, it has attack speed, it has bonus ranks to Whirlwind, and you do explode a lot, which is, I guess, pretty fun to use. The explosion in itself used to not be all that good. Even in Season 9, it was not all that impressive to me. I'm not sure. Maybe Hao Inumiku is going to be cooking something with it, but for now, I'm just going to be putting this one as probably C tier. It's very, very whirlwind specific, not going to be used for anything else. All right, and the last of our category, because Barbarian do not have a single pants Chaos Armor, we're going to be talking about the boots, so the Hooves of the Mountain God, right? Well, the Hooves of the Mountain God got introduced in Season 9. They were an immediate hit because they all about basic skill. They gave you movement speed, fury per second, 48.8% attack speed, basic attack speed cap 2, and mostly the belligerence, passive ranks, which increases your damage, and to top it off, you get a massive bonus damage to your basic skill and you make them cleave. Well, this one is an obvious hit, and I'm still expecting it to be extremely strong in Season 10, so this one is going to be going to A tier, because it still does lack a little bit of flexibility, but it is very good. Alright, well, this is going to be it for the video. I apologize for it to be... It has taken quite a while. Those are the final rankings at the bottom there. Feel free to share those, use them if you want to be cooking some builds. And let me know in the comments if there are any kind of other item I should have given a better score, I guess. On a closing note as well, I do hope that we do see Ramalani Magnum Opus being added to the list of Chaos Armor. The main reason being that so far this has been a one-handed, so dual-wield specific item. And I do feel like that given the amount of new interactions with resources for Barbarian, a couple of like two-handed based builds could benefit from this heavily. So hopefully Blizzard Senpai, please add our dearest RMO to the Chaos Unique pool. Thank you.